The world is becoming more unglued by the day. Local consequences are now showing up. We are seeing sky-high gas prices, higher food prices, shortages, and more. How should you respond? Go to redpills.tv/patriot. That's redpills.tv/patriot. And secure your long-term emergency food storage from My Patriot Supply. My Patriot Supply is by far the largest preparedness company in America. They're in stock and shipping quickly in unmarked boxes to your door. Their emergency food supplies last up to 25 years in storage. When you need it, it'll be there. Lunches, dinners, drinks, and snacks totaling over 2,000 calories a day. Get free shipping on any order over $99. Again, go to redpills.tv/patriot.
Broadcasting from the spaceship in the sky to the simulation in the mind. Let's all embark on another journey of conversations on the fringe.
I got the open. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I am Vlynn, and with me is my esteemed husband, Mick. We are filling in for Josh tonight on Conversations on the Fringe. And actually, we're going to be joined by our good friend Kyle from the Big Dumb Podcast. And I apologize that we were late here, y'all, because we had an incredibly rough night. Our own show pretty much got shut down because our internet stopped working. And then once we got that working, our power shut down. Our computer, apparently our charging port died. So that was a little rough. So Mick's a little frustrated and not really speaking, if you can tell from the look of on his face. And then our third monitor is not working as well. So it's been a frustrating recording evening, but that's okay. We're going to get through it. How are you tonight, Kyle?
We'll do it live.
Hey, that's how it goes sometimes. You know what I mean? You know, never really predict what's going to happen, what's going to go wrong. But you know what? That's why we're in this. You know, we're here to fight the fight, as sometimes as ridiculous as the little problems may be that are out of our control. You know, we do what we can and try to spread the truth and try to have fun and have good conversations in spite of all that. You know, I doubt, you know, based on what you guys talk about, what, you know, Red Pill Project talks about, I would be surprised if your neighbors were having the same issues that you guys are, because you never, you know, it's just, it always seems to be people like us having these problems. And it could be a mix of we're being attacked by the deep state or we're just extra retarded. I don't know. I'm sure it's a mix of both, but Thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here, and it's always a pleasure with you guys.
Hey, and tell people where they can find you. And just as a heads up, we are broadcasting on YouTube tonight as well for Conversations on the Fringe. So you know what that means. So.
I know exactly what you mean. It's going to be an extra fun time.
Exactly.
Again, thank you guys. I'm Kyle with the Big Dumb Podcast. You can check me out on all podcast platforms, including Podcasting 2.0. I'm also on Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. I think I have like a Truth Social and a Gab. I honestly, I don't know. It's been like, when everything was going down with all the censorship, I like made all these extra accounts. And then that thing with Parler happened. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to touch these because I'm afraid they're, some sort of honey trap or something like that. But yeah, just look up Big Dumb Podcast. I'll pop up. That's the name for now. Things might be changing in the near future. But of course, when that happens, y'all will be the first to know. But again, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to get into it tonight.
Yeah. And it's going to be a very interesting show. We've done this particular show in multiple parts starting a year ago. In fact, the first show we did, because the story that we're going to tell tonight, the experience that we're going to talk about tonight is actually Mick's and my experience. And Kyle, I think you've heard parts of this story here and there.
I've heard bits and pieces, and I'm excited to hear it all put together because I've been confused for a long time.
That's kind of what happened. So the first time we talked about this was September of last year on NY Patriot. And that particular episode got scrubbed from everywhere but Odyssey, including Podbean.
Yeah. Oh, Podbean took it down? And you paid them? That's ridiculous. Oh, I don't
it was his account. I don't know that I paid that. I mean, he might have had a free account, but yeah, it was on his channel. They took it down. And then we've talked about it here and there from, over the course of our various shows, our Truspiracy show that we do on Sunday afternoons. And I guess I should tell everyone where you can find us, since we are not normally on Conversations on the Fringe. We are Mick and Vlynn from the Patriot Party podcast, and you can find us weekdays, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. on redpills.tv, as well as on Twitch, Rumble, CloutHub, DLive, and on Cannabis and Combat channels, his Roku, DLive, Twitch as well. And then on Sundays, we do a Truspiracy show, which is very similar to Conversations on the Fringe. So that's 2 p.m. on Sundays on all those same channels. So we started telling this story a year ago. And when it first happened, September 4th, 2021, I thought I was crazy. I thought he thought I was crazy, or maybe not so much, but I didn't know as much then as I know now. So I wrote the first part of the story. I wrote the whole thing down. Okay. Now, mind you, I have never been a particularly religious person. I was born and baptized Catholic and fell away from the church pretty early on. Our oldest son dragged me back kicking and screaming basically when he was 9 and came to me and told me that he wanted to go to CCD. And I was like, what is CCD? Oh, it's Catholic school. It's, free religion class. And I was like, you want to go to religion class? Okay. And then it was, Mom, I want to be an altar server. And I was like, for real? Okay. I guess I have to start going to church then. I can't just drop you off and jet, So that's how I ended up going back to church. My kid decided he wanted to be an altar server. And then it was, Mom, I want to go to private Catholic school. And now we're here. But I was never particularly religious. Mick, on the other hand, is probably one of the most faithful, devout Catholics I've ever met. And he's just started to realize in the past few months that religion in general is a kind of a crutch for the masses. Not to say that God doesn't exist, because he most certainly does. And not to say that there's
structure itself, the institution itself, rather, not necessarily the faith.
Yes.
I think a lot of people are in that boat. Mick, I know I was, I am in that boat. Actually, I kind of followed that same path, Vlynn, where I wasn't really raised in a certain religion. My family was, Italian Catholic, very, kind of just in the ritualistic sense, right? We did Easter, we did Christmas, we did, Christmas Eve, all that stuff at the church, and then fell out of it, and then when I was, like a teenager, like a preteen, even, I started going to church, like a Southern Baptist, not non-denominational, as they say, church. And I got super involved, man. I was very malleable. I was young. I had a good social group. I was in the church band. Like, I felt like a rock star at church. I was like, man, God is good. I'm getting girls. I'm getting, time on stage. Like, it was awesome.
I'm getting
And
digits.
I went to church to meet girls. I love it.
100%, 100%. And then once you get so involved, then the people in that institution, the people in the church are the problem. At least in my experience, they started getting involved in my private life. They started, actually like really screwing me over in a lot of ways. And so I just, I couldn't forgive them. I was like, well, if these people are like this, then God must be like this as well. And so I kind of blamed it on everything on church as a whole, right? And it took years. I was an atheist. I hated church. I hated God, all this stuff. And it took me kind of going through this journey of seeking the truth and understanding and talking to people like you. I was like, oh no, God has always been there. It was just the people that kind of, and the institutions that kind of ruined it for me. So I didn't mean to derail there, but I
No,
agree.
not at all.
I just wanted to say that because I think a lot of people are in the same boat.
Yes, I agree. And so when this happened, now our oldest son was 15. So we'd been going to church regularly, or I had been for about 6 years. And if I told this story to people that were in our old church, because we just recently moved and haven't found a new church that we like, and fallen away for other reasons as well. But if I told this story to the people in our church, they would have me committed, honestly. They would think I was completely batshit crazy. And it's such a tell about how our society has changed, because 200 years ago, it was commonly accepted that people heard voices, talked to spirits, had precognitive dreams. I mean, all these things. The spiritual world, the spiritual realm was completely accepted, has been for thousands of years. It's really only in the last 100 to 200 years that they have changed our society. So now if you hear voices, you're schizophrenic. Or now if you have visions, you're psychotic. Or if you see auras, you've got a neurological problem. Like this, they've tried to eliminate the spiritual world from our society.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is you can't, because it's real. It actually exists. You can't just pretend it away, right? So that being the preface to this story. So I'm going to read this. And when we came home, because we went, actually, this happened while we were out of town. We went up to Pennsylvania for my best friend's wedding, who I hadn't seen in a very long time. And when we came home, I sat on our back porch and I relived the entire experience and wrote it down as I relived it. And it took me as long to write it as it took me to live it in the first place, which was about 3.5, almost 4 hours. Mm-hmm. It's about a 15-minute read, and there's some of it gets very graphic. So I know I'll skip over a couple parts here and there.
If I have a question, is it okay if I jump in, or do you want to just read it all the way through?
No, by all means. If you have a question, by all means, interrupt. Okay.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. This is dated September 5th, 2021. An angel came to visit me last night. Michael, I think. My husband and I, were at my best friend's wedding in Pennsylvania. We did a weekend trip up, which meant 20 hours in the car for one day with my friends. But it was worth it. He won't be with us much longer, and I'm so grateful I got to see him one last time. It was a beautiful wedding, small, intimate, 100 people in a cafe, with the wedding and the reception in the same place. We went to see David at his house in the afternoon to hang out for a bit before the event. We got to the wedding a little early, about 4:15 for a 5 p.m. ceremony. Open bar, so why not, right? Mick had a few too many martinis early on, so I laid off. Whichever one of us gets drunk first does not drive. We met some cool people, especially Brian with the blue hair and his partner, Brian. They both loved Mick. He pretends to be antisocial, but when he wants to be and he's got his Irish up, he can charm pretty much anyone. The ceremony was beautiful and unique to them, just perfect. Dinner was great. Music was fabulous. The dancing just got started, and then it got weird. I came in from the outside patio in time for cake and sat down next to Mick. And then his watch dinged. He looked at it, a text message, and said, "You know that number I told you to remember? Which one? There are lots of numbers. 666, 500 million, 70%, I said. 47.1. It just came out. The audit numbers. Side note, I haven't yet seen it made public, and I've been looking. And to date, it still hasn't come out." And then his watch dinged again, and he looked at it and went white and sober. "We've got to go," he said. "What do you mean we've got to go? It's my best friend's wedding. We drove 10 plus hours for this. What the hell? What's going on?" "I just got a warning that we're not safe here." "Who knows we're here?" he asked. And now I was sober, but calm, because I don't lose my shit under pressure. "Just my parents, my boss, the kids. I don't think we said it on the podcast, just that we were traveling." "I don't think so either," he said. "Eat your cake and say your goodbyes, and I'll meet you out back." So I did. Told my friend Dave we had to go. And if anyone asked, go
Can
for
I
it.
pause you real quick?
Yeah.
Mick, you may or may not be able to tell me this, but who gave you this information?
It came from one of my, well, first of all, I thought it came from one of my sources. And because that's the number that popped in my phone. And I was like, I know that number. I went and looked at it the next day, and
wasn't there.
There was no text message.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But
So
it's
in the moment, you were like, "Oh, this is somebody who knows knows me, who I know, who I trust," and
would give me the heads up, like, "Hey, dude, you got like," he basically said, "You got like 5 minutes and you get the fuck out of there." Okay.
Continue, please. Sorry.
Absolutely. Yep. So I told Dave we had to go, and if anyone asked about us, we were never there. I grabbed up our name placeholders from the table. I think good. Said saw Brian with the blue hair on the way out the front door, and called Mick. Actually, I texted him first, but he didn't respond right away, so I called him. "Where are you?" "By the truck," he said. "About a block away." I rushed down the street in my heels. Not the best neighborhood, but I'm really quick in heels. And I got in the truck. Mick was in the driver's seat. "Want me to drive?" I asked. "Absolutely not." And then he proceeded to utilize all of his training in driving, tracking, and evasion to get us back to the hotel. Side streets, constantly watching the rearview mirror, to the point where he had me watching the front while he was watching the rearview mirror while he was driving. He even pulled a fast Dewey in the middle of a main road, going about 60 miles an hour, mind you. Drove up to the road to the hotel with his lights off, and he backed into a parking space across from the side door, which happened to be the door to the hall where our room was located. Convenient. There was a drunk guy standing by the door. He seemed very obviously drunk, almost too obvious. Just stood there for a while, leaning against the wall, sometimes swaying down as he smoked something, a cigarette, a joint, not sure. Then he walked towards the truck, circling towards my side. Mick thought he was going to get a good look at the plate, but then he turned away and went towards the dumpster and tossed something on the ground, probably whatever he'd been smoking, and walked around towards the corner of the building towards the pool. And at the same time, a car pulled in, a minivan with round headlights and a roof rack. The same car Mick thought had been following us earlier. But they pulled into a spot in front of the side door. A man, a woman, and a teenager got out with their bags. Mick was full of paranoia. "If they don't all walk around the front, if one of them stays back, we're leaving everything in the room and we're going home." "We are not. The computer's in there, my tablet, our clothes. I'll go get it," I said. "No," he said. "I didn't get the message until you went outside by yourself. They're not after me. They're after you. Come on, we'll go together. Pack our stuff and get out of Pennsylvania." "Okay," I said. And we went into our room without incident. I immediately started packing up. We didn't have much, and changed out of my party dress. And then Mick said, "If they're watching us and we leave right now, they'll get us easily. Let's get a few hours of sleep and leave first thing. More traffic to blend with." "I think that's a good idea," I said. "You drove all day yesterday and had a lot to drink tonight. We could both use some sleep. But I'm glad you gave me some before we left." "Oh, I promised you more tonight. I'm going to keep that promise," he said, standing in front of the door, holding his gun, listening for sounds in the hallway. And I laughed. "And how are you going to keep that promise while you're watching the door?" I asked. And he turned around and he threw his gun on the bed And he stripped off his clothes, hanging his jacket carefully on the hanger.
You
And
devil.
he looked at the pins on it for a minute, studying them. And then he stalked back to the door and he listened again. Bring me my gun, he whispered. I complied, holding it like he taught me and handing it to him. He listened for another second and then waved me over to the bed. Get over there, he whispered, still listening to voices and noises. And then he turned back towards me and he looked at me. And I've never seen that look in his eyes before. And I've known him for 30 plus years. He looked like a caged animal. It was scary and compelling at the same time. And he put his gun down on the nightstand and said, now I'm going to make love to you. A flat statement, but still compelling. Anyway.
Skip. Delete.
So
erase.
Yeah,
anyway.
you want to skip through the next, like, what,
Yeah.
2 lines, Nick? Is that all it is?
A little
Two
bit.
lines? Or is it a paragraph? What we got going on?
Yeah.
Five pump jump.
So I crawled up to him and I straddled him and he said, I'll always protect you. That's why I'm here. I know, I said, that's why you're still here, to protect me and our children. They're not my children, he said. I'm sorry, what? Of course they're your kids. And I stopped moving, straddling him. I said, Liam looks just like you. In whose eyes? He asked. In your eyes, he said. In everyone's eyes, I said. In your eyes, he repeated. Have you never been with another man? And this was a very odd question coming from my husband because we grew up together. I'd had plenty of boyfriends. I was living with someone else when he stole me away. And I'd had an affair years ago when he and I were separated, and he knew all of that. Not around the time I was getting pregnant, I said. I couldn't lie to him. Never could, although sometimes I tried. It never worked. They're not my kids, he said again. And I looked at him, and I knew it was not my husband in there. It was someone else. Who are you? I asked. I can't tell you that. If I reveal myself, it will bring death, famine, plague, and war, he said. Aren't we already there? I asked. The world has been fucked for a while and it's not getting better. Not yet, he said and frowned. Soon, but not yet. He pulled me down to hold me and I buried my face in his neck. Is that why I haven't been able to call you by your name all night? I asked. Yes, I am not he said. Where is my husband? I asked. Dead, he said. No, he's not, I said. I can still feel his energy. He died a long time ago, he said. No, he didn't. I brought him back and I'm keeping him with me. He's still here. He didn't die a long time ago. Liam is proof of that, I said. And then he said, you need to listen more. I listen all the time. You need to listen more, he repeated. God has been trying to reach you. I listen all the time. That's why I sit outside, I said. You hear, but you don't listen. And then he rolled me over. And know this. You
Driving are things that just don't know how to work together.
Yeah. I said, but I've felt stalked all my life. You chose to be here, he said. I know I chose to be here in this time and that I have a purpose, but I don't know what it is. You need to listen more. You don't believe, he said. I do listen, I said. Strangers have been walking up to me on the street my whole life and telling me that I'll bring a lot of people to the light, but I don't know what that means. How do I do that? I asked him. You need to listen more and try harder. Oh, I was frustrated. So I was quiet for a minute while I calmed down. I want a daughter, I said. You can't have one, he said. You're to have the Son of Man. No, I said, I'm too old. That's what Mary said, he responded. I don't want that for my boys. They shouldn't have to go through that. And then he said, they chose to be here too in this time for their own purpose. You need to listen more. You don't believe. And I knew he was right. My boys have special gifts and a special relationship with God. But I still felt driven to protect them. I shouldn't have cut my hair, I said. Yes, you should have. Do you know about the chime, I asked, and the numbered ones, and Makara, I asked? I'd learned about these things from my research into the Vril, and I knew Mick knew nothing about them. Of course I do. He was angry all of a sudden, when before he was calm. What do you know about them? He demanded, jumping out of the bed and glaring at me. He was menacing and magnificent all at the same time. I've been in contact with the numbered ones, I said. Do you want to call him? I asked, throwing anger back at him. He might be menacing, but I have no fear of him. He would never hurt me. He would lay down his life for me. I've always known that. Yes, call him, he challenged. Well, I've got his phone number, but I've never spoken to him, only emailed. And it's pretty late, I prevaricated. He let it go. I'm getting messages from God and Jesus, he said. Text messages? What service do they use? Verizon? AT&T? Horizon, he said. And I cracked up laughing. It was a good one. That's not the bloodline I'm here to protect, he said. I'm Catholic. I protect the blood of St. Clair, he shouted. And I know I'm descended from Jesus and Mary, I said. You don't understand what that means, he said. I'm the dragon, I asked, trying to remember my revelations. No, he yelled. You fight the dragon. You have 10 years from today, September 4th. And then he walked over towards the door, and he stood in front of the mirror, and he looked at himself. And I looked too, because he has a supremely excellent ass. Few women marry a true warrior, he said. You can't see my wings, but they're there. And then he looked at me sitting in the bed and he said, you're shivering again. And I got up to put some clothes on, but he grabbed them out of my hands and threw them across the room, dragged me back to the bed. We were both sitting up. My legs were straddling his waist, and he grabbed my head in his hands and he kissed my forehead firmly. I loved you, but he loves you, he said. And I knew he was talking about Mick. I knew you before this time, I said, and it wasn't a question. Yes, he said, and he laid down, pulling me over to straddle him again. What does this body always do around you? He asked. Respond, I said. He said, I have more control. He can't feel his right leg. He's really messed up, he said. I know. He's been that way a long time. I told you I've kept him here. His purpose is not yet fulfilled, he said. Trust him. He'll protect you. I cannot stay here. And then he closed his eyes. And all of a sudden, his right arm jerked up above his head hard, pulling him onto his side like something was pulling out of him. And Mick rolled back over, and he wasn't breathing. And I started massaging his chest and smacking his face. Come back to me, I said. Mick opened his eyes and looked at me, naked and straddling him. But there was no recognition. His eyes went wide and scared. Who the fuck are you? He said. Get the fuck off me. I'm your wife, I said. Calm down, babe. Come back to me. And then his eyes closed again, and again he stopped breathing. And I started massaging his chest again and blew a few breaths into his mouth. Come back to me, I said again. His eyes opened again, and this time they recognized me. Hey, I said, do you know who I am? I asked. Yeah. It took him a minute, and then he said my name. Good. Do you know where we are? I asked. And he looked around at the hotel room. We're in D.C., he said. I just dropped off a prisoner. I said, no, babe, we're in Pennsylvania. We drove up for Dave's wedding. He looked back. It's 2021. We've been married for 17 years. We have 2 kids. We do a podcast together where we rail against the government. Biden is pretending to be president. Who? He asked. We had taken a trip to D.C. before we got married, so I knew exactly when he thought we were. Joe Biden. Trump was president before him. That was the shit. Who? He asked again. Donald Trump, I said. And then his eyes closed and he stopped breathing again. Back to bringing him back. Chest massage, cheek slapping. Finally, I yelled, come back to me. And his eyes opened. Why am I back? He asked. And it wasn't Mick. I don't know, I said. Where's my husband? He's over there, moving his eyes up. Bring him back, I said. All of him. In this time, I demanded. He asked. And do you think you can move? You're kind of crushing my junk. I was still straddling him. So I moved and I started to tell him the story. And when I got to the part about the warning, he said, let's check my phone. And there were no messages there, only the text from me after asking where he was as we were leaving the wedding. And then I told him about me asking about the chimes and the numbered ones. And he said, what the fuck is that? And just something I discovered in my Vril research, I said. And then I told him the rest, all of it. You know, you sound batshit crazy, right? I know, I said. I couldn't make this up, and I can't lie to you. You know that. Are you sure you weren't dreaming? He asked. Positive, I said. We've been back here for 3 hours. I never went to sleep. Well, what kind of weed were you smoking with Dave? I think it was maybe a little too much. I said, I took one hit and that was hours ago. I'm not high. I'm not drunk. I was not dreaming. I'm telling you what happened. So you're telling me that I was possessed by the angel Gabriel and that you're the next Mary and that you're going to bear the Son of Man and fight the dragon? Yeah, that about sums it up. But I think it was Michael, he said. Why Michael? He asked. I don't know. I just felt it. And I couldn't call you by your name, but I could call you Mick, and that's the closest to Michael. He shook his head. I'm beat and raw. And he looked down at himself. I guess I missed a good time. Let's get some sleep. We'll talk about it on the ride home tomorrow. And then he kissed me, and I realized that except for the tender kiss on the forehead, that was the first time he'd kissed me all night. The next day on the ride home, he didn't remember any of it. He didn't remember me telling him about it. He didn't remember anything that happened from the time that we really left the patio or that you got the messages. Yeah. He didn't remember any of it. And I thought I was freaking crazy because what else would you think, right? So
fast forward.
Then it happened again. Not nearly as long the second time. The second time he came to me and I was angry. Like I was mad. I was yelling at him. Like, what do you want with me? You know, what the hell do you want with me? I don't understand. So that didn't last for very long. Then the third time he came, we were on our way home from our friend's house, and with the kids in the car, and he looked over at me, and until recently he would always pass out for a minute before this happened, right? Like just close his eyes for a second and then it'd come back and it wasn't him. And so I looked over at, like, he leaned his head back in the car and I knew it was coming, and I looked over at him and he looked at me and I was like, not with the kids. So I started playing that Struggle Jennings song, God, We Need You Now, right? Playing it as loud as I could, singing at the top of my lungs, like yelling it at him almost. And when we got back to the house, you have the recording on here? I know. I'm gonna text it to you real quick.
It's kind of immaterial at this point. Just go ahead and tell the story.
Well,
you're already halfway there, so you might as well.
I know, but I want to play the recording. Please tell me how. There it is. Okay. It's downloading to the phone. So anyway, that it'll take a minute. We'll get there because that's the next time. So we had a whole conversation and about me not listening and needing to have more faith, and someone's trying to talk to me and this, that, and the other. And I didn't believe him, right? I kind of in the back of my head thought Mick was fucking with me, right? Because I couldn't really believe it was real. So we go inside and yeah, that's it. We go inside and our oldest son helps me get him to bed. And he's laying in bed and he's complaining that his hands hurt, that his hands are bleeding. That his palms are bleeding. There's blood on his hands, and he starts freaking out like his hands are bleeding. And I'm like, babe, your hands are not bleeding. Calm down. And then he stretches his legs out and he puts his right foot over his left foot and he points his toes. And he started saying that his feet hurt and his feet were bleeding. And that's really important because he can't feel his right leg. He physically cannot put his right foot over his left foot and point his toes. It's not physically possible for him to do. And yeah, you're right, Linz. He was feeling the pain of the stigmata. Not to convince him, but to convince me that it was real. That was the only thing that it could have been.
Can I ask real quick what is stigmata? That sounds familiar. I just might.
It's where you suffer the curses of the same wounds that Jesus suffered on the cross.
Very holy people, monks.
Everything prior to him actually going up the cross. So if you think about the crown of thorns that was put on him before he was hung on the cross, if you think about the slashes on his back that happened to him prior to being on the cross, if you think about any of the cuts from the cat of nine tails that was used while he was carrying the cross up, that all happened prior to. These are all things that have happened. You inexplicably know languages that you never knew the day before. You're able to write, read, translate, and speak in really an ancient dead language, which is
right around this time. Actually, Mick was working as a firefighter, and he there's another guy on shift with him, and in the middle of the night, they found him wandering through the bay where the trucks are in his underwear, speaking in a language that no one could understand. And it wasn't anything similar. It wasn't, everyone knows what Romance languages sound like, or even, Russian. Like you can at least comprehend, okay.
Languages and things like that.
This was something completely different.
Yeah. And when I was in church, myself, I don't know if it was legit or if, but certainly other people would speak in tongues. But they were all very different and distinct. But you're saying you were able to read and write?
No, he was speaking.
No.
He was speaking
normal people can, if you're suffering from the stigmata, according to all the curses that come with it, because in the Catholic Church, even though I'm a Catholic and we believe that is part of it, even in the Catholic Church, the stigmata is considered a curse. It's not considered, because who would ever want to endure the same
right.
Jesus endured? It's kind of the same type thought process behind it. And to suffer that, you're basically going through holy shit. I mean, that's like horrible. Like most people you wouldn't even consider it on any given day, at least. And the people that actually endure the stigmata, the marks of the stigmata, and you can, they've had it in their hands, they've had it in their wrists.
They manifest
physical wounds on their hands, on their feet, where they just continually bleed, and there's no way of stopping it.
Can't close the wound.
And it comes in kind of like waves. Like the first one's really, really bad. The second one is pretty bad from that. And it gets worse and worse and worse. And it gets to the point where they're writing in foreign languages that are, like I said, Sanskrit, 3,000-year-old dead language.
So it's only not necessarily, it's different from speaking in tongues, because it takes that physical aspect a lot further. And if it continues on, it gets much more severe with not only the speaking, but you actually start to manifest actually writing and reading this previously unknown language. Okay, I understand.
Dead languages, yeah. And so Mick didn't physically manifest the wounds of the stigmata, but he did definitely feel them. And and again, because it wasn't to convince him, it was to convince me. And it did. So over the course of 40 days and 40 nights, Gabriel came to see me 5 times. 5 times. So this was the 4th time. And again, we were on our way home from the same friend's house, our very good friends, and in the car. And because initially, because our house was very well shielded, psychically shielded, I guess you could say, very little could get into our house. So it was always when we were traveling or when we were in the car. It wasn't until I later on allowed him access, and then once we moved, that he could come more easily. But so the 4th time he came,
you allowed him access. I love how you put that. I allowed him access. He's like, yeah, he's here.
Well, no, it makes sense in a way.
Yeah, and now I can't freaking get rid of him. Thank you very much.
No, but that makes sense in a way.
Damn vampire! I invited him in, and now he can't leave.
Well, I think that applies to most spirits, whether willingly or unknowingly. You invite things in. I mean, that's why people, I don't fuck with. I don't fuck with these
everything that happened to me so far is fucking rape. All right. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want this. Everything that's happening to me right now is
Well, that's
rape.
what I'm saying. Unwillingly, you might have allowed it. I'm not saying with like an angel. I think an angel certainly could uh, take, use you as a vessel without you giving an access. But as far as like a home, like a space,
Yes.
Like consent.
Yes, consent. Yes, yes, exactly.
The operative word is
and that's,
consent.
I think, where a lot of the vampire legends come from, where you have to invite a vampire in. I think it's kind of the same thing.
same with the demon, right? You have to allow it.
You have to allow them in. Yes. So, so the fourth time he came, again, we were on our way home from a friend's house, and he did the same thing in the trip home. He looked at me, like put his head back, looked at me, and he wasn't there. And I did the same thing. I cranked up that Struggle Jennings song, which Mick really can't stand, by the way. Like it's grown on him. He likes it more now, but at that time, like he could not stand that song. I wanted to play it on the show all the time. He wouldn't let me, right? That song, God, we need you now. So I start bellowing at the top of my lungs, and we get home, and I send the kids inside, and I go to get him out of the car, but he can't move. So I said, okay. So I went and got back in the car. But as I was walking back around to the driver's seat, I took out my phone, and I was pretty sneaky about it. And I hit the voice record button. And then I got back in the car, and I put my phone face down in the center console, and I recorded the whole thing. And here it is.
Lynn said she's putting me up for adoption.
So it's 13 minutes and 13 seconds, and that was not planned. It's just how it turned out. So here you go.
Okay, so tell me how it works.
I had full control a while ago. It's gone now. You didn't listen. I told you to listen. You didn't hear. You heard what you wanted to hear. You believe for all of a day. Belief for a day is not for all of that of a lifetime. Are there any questions? Before I leave now.
There's a ton of questions.
I'm sure there is, and there's none I can answer for you.
Well, then why ask the question if you can't actually answer them?
Because the question has to be asked.
That seems kind of pointless.
That's for your lack of belief.
Oh, I believe.
Oh, I believe too. I believe you believe something that does not exist.
What do you think I believe that doesn't exist?
Me, God.
God doesn't
that
exist?
Are beyond your control. I believe you believe that.
I think you proved it to me pretty well last week.
40 days and 40 nights. Just remember what that means. Just remember, I'm not bullshitting you. He's in tons of pain. He feels everything. I fucking feel everything. And I'm tired of feeling everything. I don't want to come back to him. He's been chosen for a reason. You've been chosen for a reason. It's up to you now to figure out what that reason is. I can only tell you so much.
What am I supposed to do?
Believe. Have faith. Believe in something you can't see, touch, smell, or hear. But believe. He can. Not only he can, but the ability for him to understand even what is coming out of my mouth right now is a sign that he's more than what he seems.
Well, yeah, that's true.
However,
did you heal him from the jab?
I cannot carry on in the body I'm in. not without hurting him severely, and I'm not allowed to do that. Therefore, there's only so many times I can come back in this form. Everything from this point on will be something you've never seen before. I cannot come back to him. I come back to him again, he dies. Your call.
No, don't then. I definitely don't want him to die.
Right now, I can't move anything of him past his neck, because he's no longer accepting. So he's begun to doubt. He didn't doubt before. So what have you done to change his mind?
I told him the truth and it scared him.
You told him the truth about what?
About you?
About what you don't understand.
I told him exactly what happened. The entire
You told him
experience.
something you will never, ever, ever begin to even fathom. Something the Lord above hasn't even told you yet, because you have failed to listen.
How do I listen?
Open your ears. It's all around you. You just have to listen. It's in everything you see, do, and touch. But you have to listen. You have to have faith. Faith in something more than you. Faith in something that doesn't even apply to you. All mankind is part of this and is at the end of this. However, if you don't believe, all of mankind is doomed.
You're putting the fate of humanity on my shoulders? On my ability to believe? Or he is.
You think Mary had it any easier? He works in mysterious ways.
Ain't that the truth?
However mysterious to you, however mysterious to me, he also has faith in mankind. But apparently that faith is waning.
We done pissed him off.
You've done something. And there ain't a soul that's going to believe you.
Of course they're not going to believe me. They didn't believe Mary either.
Well, if you believe in that story, what's so hard about what I'm telling you?
Again, I told you I believe you. You proved it to me last week. I question everything. I need evidence, but you freaking hit me over the head with it.
You're still questioning.
Well, today was...
He knows. He knows better than anybody else. You might want to think twice. He knows. Stop questioning. Why question something you know it's going to happen? I can't think of one reason. Oh, then again, I've seen more things you will ever see.
Is the shot cutting people off from
I
God?
don't have much more time. Are those really the questions you want to ask me?
If I have no control over what's going to happen, you told me you can't answer any questions about what's going to happen or what I'm supposed to do.
Are
I have to
those
figure it out for myself.
really the questions you want to ask me, though? Mankind's had so many more questions. Are we the only ones out here? Are we the only ones? Did you create everything?
I already know the answer to that question.
Really?
He did create everything.
For someone who doesn't believe as much as you do, I find that hard to believe.
I know we're all connected. I'm connected to him through that connection.
Yeah, but you don't believe that.
I do believe that.
Not in him, you don't.
Is the earth flat?
As I said, your faith is misplaced.
Is the earth flat?
Place your faith where it belongs. And as I said before that, listen to what's being told to you. You are the acceptor of all the truths, of everything that mankind needs to know.
And these truths are so important that she asked the one question that we were all wondering the answer to. Is the earth flat?
Is the earth flat?
She didn't ask once.
This
She
whole
asked like
time I
3
was
times.
like,
Is the earth flat?
the question, like Vlynn, like this could be the most, pivotal point in in your life. And you just, like,
Is the
I
earth
love
flat?
that that's the question you ask: is the earth flat? And Mick's like, or Mick or Gabriel, whoever's like, most people ask me like, are we alone? Is there? And he's like,
Why are we here?
yeah, and she's like, is the earth flat? A true conspiracy podcaster question. I give kudos to you. 10 points to Vlynn.
You're definitely dedicated. I'll give you that. She didn't ask once. She didn't ask twice, folks. But the third time, she kindly figured it out. Yeah, he's not going to answer that question.
Yeah. All right, keep going because it gets better from here. Yeah.
I just thought that was hysterical.
I
I
know.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, oh my
the
God.
funniest part of the recording. Like, I almost like fucking pissed myself the first time I heard it, especially when she whispered it, when she went, is the earth flat? Like, that was going to change something. Like, somehow, if I whisper it, maybe he'll answer the question.
I was actually whispering into myself, like, I can't believe I just asked that. All right, keep going.
Oh, that was a right.
You will tell everyone. That's up to you, though. It's not up to him.
What am I supposed to tell them?
What you know is true.
Is it going to be the end, or is it the beginning of something new?
Is that a question you really want to know?
Well, at least I'm getting somewhere. Yeah, it is a question I really want to know.
It's not an answer I'm willing to give you.
Wow. That kind of tells me the answer then.
10 years.
From
a week
September
ago.
4th. 2 weeks ago. Your perception of time is messed up.
You'll have that when you jump into just some human.
He's more than just some human, and you know it.
Well, yeah, because no human can hear me without their heads exploding and their chests imploding.
What's your name?
Gabriel, you've known my name. You've known my name since the first day I was here.
I thought you were Michael.
Okay, I start laughing there because the look on his face was horrified. It was the most offensive thing I could have possibly said to him.
Like, she admitted she had just slept with my brother or something.
It was
Is the way that she explained it to me. It was like, I just said that I slept with your brother. And I was like,
I just imagine throughout the eons that maybe Gabriel and Michael had a little bit of beef. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
No, they do.
We get to that. But yeah, so I wanted to give an explanation of why I burst out laughing there because his face was like, it was horrifying.
Not a big fan, are you?
I'm trying to stop Michael.
What is Michael trying to do?
What do you think Michael's doing? What is Michael known for?
War, plague, death, destruction.
So one more time. What do you think I'm trying to stop?
What do I do?
What have I told you?
Listen.
It's all around you. He will tell you what to do. Only the unfaithful don't hear him. Obviously, the person I'm in right now hears him. Because if he didn't hear him, we would not be having this conversation right now. Because his head would have exploded and his chest would have imploded. Because that kind of happens when you talk to an angel. It's one of those things.
So I've heard. Although there's not much written about it because y'all don't come to visit very often.
No, but normally when we do, we're trying to ward off something really bad.
Everyone's going to die.
Well, it's up to mankind.
Not everyone, but...
Again, that's up to mankind. I don't have much time left.
What do you have left to tell me?
What questions? Yeah.
Go. I'll ask God my questions. Send my husband back to me.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
What happened at the end there? It sounded like you maybe slumped over in your seat or something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then I grabbed his hands and he came to with a good deep breath, the first real breath he'd taken that entire time.
I just am surprised you stayed so calm, Vlynn. Like, just to obviously, I'm sure there was a calming over a fearful presence when you're actually speaking to Gabriel, but when Mick slumped over, you said, you very calmly, can I have my husband back, please? Like, you were so polite, and that just like, I just can imagine any other situation you would have like freaked out, but kudos to you. You get another 10 points for staying so calm, on top of the 10 for asking if the earth is flat. So,
well, I did kind of freak out in the middle of it there. I mean, obviously I went through.
I heard it. I heard it.
Emotions. I mean, I was crying. I was confused, angry, upset, elated, crying at the same time. An unknown ranger asked, "Did the room smell like jasmine?" So we were in my car, and it did smell like jasmine. However, we do have jasmine all over, and jasmine was blooming. It was October, or at the end of September. But yes, it did smell like flowers.
Associated with experiences like this.
A lot of these experiences come with very distinctive flower smells. Yes.
Okay.
And then, don't ask me. I have about it. We figured it out. It's like 2 or 3 hours that I have no memory.
Like total time.
Complete total time gone.
And on Lone Ranger, you and I are going to have to talk another time because obviously you're a part of this. But so Gabriel came again another time, even though he said that he couldn't come back. But when we went to Tulsa at the beginning of October, for the Clay Clark thing, and on the plane on the way back, he was reading a book. We're going over a book. We're reading it together. And he was reading it aloud. And he was in the middle of a sentence and his head leaned back in the chair. And then his eyes opened and I knew right away.
On the plane?
On the plane. And I went to grab my phone and he wouldn't let me. No, put it away. This is just for you. I said, okay. And he said,
So then she goes on to tell everybody else.
Well, yeah, of course. He said, you still have, you have a question. You still have a question. And I said, well, it doesn't make sense. He said, what doesn't make sense? I said, well, you told me that we have 10 years, but now I'm pregnant. At that time, I was 3 months pregnant or 2 months. I got pregnant that first night, September 4th. I said, so you said we would have 10 years, but I'm going to have the baby in 10 months. And if that's really the son of man, then we only have 3 years left after that point. So how is this 10 years? 10 years from September 4th, 2021. And he said, it's not my timeline. I'm not in charge of the time. That's up to God. Okay. And I asked him, I said, how are you back? Well, first he asked me, he said, where are we? And I said, we're on a plane. And he looked at me confused. I said, it's a tin can with wings up in the sky. And he said, oh, that's how I could come so easily because you're so much closer to me. I said, okay. And then he asked me what my question was. And then we had a little bit more of a conversation. I asked him, I said, how are you back? I thought you said if you were to come back, then Mick's head would explode, his chest would implode and his head would explode. And he said, well, he's not fighting me anymore. Why is he not fighting me anymore? I said, because he believes now, because he understands, because I played him the recording of the last time that you came, and he doesn't think he's crazy anymore. And
oh no, I still think I'm
you're crazy. I know.
Still certifiable.
And then he, again, and I mean, the people around us on the plane must have thought we were batshit crazy, right? We're having this fucking crazy conversation.
Oh, froze up again. Are they frozen or am I frozen too? Assume we both are.
Okay, here we are.
There we go. There we go.
I know.
It's our internet. We
internet's
apologize,
still being
folks.
Stupid, so,
Hey, when it's working, it works like better than
great.
usual. It's weird.
Yeah, I know, but then it's not. So, all right. So, so then
It's called. I've called and threatened these people like
so bad.
3 times. Like I've like literally said, look, I will fucking come to your house and end you tonight.
yeah, but they'll be here tomorrow afternoon. But anyway,
And I will go kill them tomorrow.
You'll be at work hopefully. So, then, I mean, literally, middle conversation, Mick's head drops back again. He comes back and he goes right back to reading the book, reading the sentence, and he didn't remember any of it. Because he doesn't remember any of it, those experiences, until my 40 days was over and then his 40 days started.
And then the motherfucker wouldn't leave me alone. And I thought I was crazy. I thought like within the first 2 weeks, I thought I was nuts because I started getting all these, started out at first as dreams. I thought they were just regular dreams. Like, you know, a dream you normally have, you wake up from, you'd be like, oh, that was cute, fun, joy. Good job, faggots. And then you realize very quickly that it wasn't a dream at all because all of a sudden everything starts happening around you exactly as the person put it out the night before. Like everything happened to the, like, I guess he went to show me how, I always say it was the awe-inspiring moment because he wanted to show himself and how powerful he was. So I saw exactly how my day would play out. Step for step, word for word, minute for minute, second for second, all the way down for the whole day. And I dreamt it the night before as if I lived it. I mean, I woke up tired and I was like, there's no fucking way. I went to work. Everything happened exactly the way it happened in my dream the night before. And I'm just sitting there going, this can't be real. This can't be this. Not to me. I'm not crazy. I have way too many guns to be nuts. And I don't want my guns taken away, so I'm not nuts. I'm not crazy. And this went on for a while. And then I started having what I call the waking dreams, because I literally be sitting there and all of a sudden dream. And it would be a conversation that I just had with this entity, whether you want to call it Gabriel, whatever you want to call it. We'll call it Gabriel for argument's sake. But just because I'll argue with him about it later, because they'll be like, why don't you just say what my name was? Okay, well, your name's Gabriel. He's told me a lot of different things, some scary, some not so scary, some that were eye-opening. The other night we were sitting out back and she had a conversation with somebody else about...
Well, hold on. We haven't gotten to what's going on now yet. Tell them about those 40 days.
What about him?
He talked to you incessantly.
Yes.
He never left you alone.
Never.
For 40 days and 40 nights.
40 days and 40
days and 40 nights.
40th day, 40th night, at the end of the 40th night at midnight, boom, he's gone.
Did you see overlapping realities? A non-Lone Ranger wants to.
Yes.
Yes.
I saw different endings for different days, different things. Like he would show, like, he would say, this is like the biggest thing I learned was free will. That was the biggest thing. He said, this is what affects all of us. He said, not just you. He said, but even in heaven, it affects all the creatures in heaven because mankind still has free will. God gave you free will. Your job is free will. That's your job. Like your whole job is free will. Like you could go $1 million. You could, Kyle. You could go to work tomorrow, make $1 million, and that is your choice because you have the free will to choose that. Then he said,
it sounds.
but that,
It's a lot harder than it sounds.
Well, that's true.
it does. But then he said, there's others of us that have been chosen. When he started talking about this, I thought he was talking about the remnant. I still think he's talking about the remnant, but he said some other things that make me believe that it's not the remnant.
The remnant is the army. He was talking about battalions within the army.
No, I don't think he was referring to the remnant because the remnant is 144,000 strong. It's supposed to be. That's what's supposed to be left over. After everything's said and done, God's had his way with mankind, and he's slashed, people off the face of the earth. And the only thing that is left, there's going to be 144,000 of us, according to the Bible. There's going to be 144,000 of us left. True believers, all the rest.
Who have already been judged.
And we've already been judged.
Who are here to fight the final battle against evil.
Who are
left behind.
We were given a mission, each one of us, to do different things. And I have run into and I have found people that have had experiences like mine. Some a little different. Some of them have been almost the exact same experience. I just went out there, just typed it in one day just to see what I would get up on the computer. And all of a sudden I had all these people talking about experiences they've had. We talk about on our show. I've got people over here in both Foxhole and on Twitch talking about experiences they've had. Yes, Deus Vult. I know exactly what that means. God wills it. Damn straight. That's Latin for God wills it, Deus Vult. Anyway, it was actually the big thing of the Templar. The Templar actually said it all the time. But minus all of that, this went on for exactly 40 days and 40 nights. On the 40th night at midnight, it ended. And then he started coming back. He came back in spurts here and there. Sometimes he would just talk to me. Sometimes he would have conversations with me. Sometimes he would come and repossess me, apparently, and talk to her. But there's a lot more to this that a lot of people don't realize. You have to understand, like my whole entire life, I thought it was fucking nuts. I still think I'm nuts. And certifiable nuts. I'm not just talking like regular nuts, just kind of like, oh, you're just kind of fucking crazy. No, I'm talking like I see around people every time I meet people. It doesn't matter if you're a new person, old person, doesn't matter how long I've known you.
Doesn't matter if it's in person or on video.
Since I was about 9 years old, I have been able to see colors around people. We're just emanating colors. And some of those colors told me that they were friendly. Some of those colors tell me exactly the opposite. You're like the worst person in the world. And if I had my way, I should end you.
Yes, auras. That's exactly right.
That's exactly what I see. Yeah. I've seen it since I was 6 years old. I thought I was fucking nuts then. I still think I'm nuts today, but I've actually used that because it's so easy. I can use it every day. When I was in the army, I used it every day.
That's how I could never lie to him.
My kids suck at it. They can't lie to me either because I can tell. I can look. Their color changes. There's something. The other night we were sitting on here. I was watching. Just watching on the screen. And we got into a point in the show and Josh had said something and all of a sudden his color on the screen changed. And I was like, I asked her about it afterwards. I was just like, what do you think? Why do you think the color changed when he said this? And we started connecting more dots there. But it was weird because it's just something I've been able to see ever since I was a kid. I've been able to see this. I also get a feeling.
That's why he knew from the first time he met me that he was going to marry me. And I was 10 years old at the time.
There's hair on the bottom of my arms. Like, you know how the hair on the top of your arm stands up? Mine stands up on the bottom of my arms. It's the weirdest thing in the world. Like if I'm seeing a color, like the hair on the bottom of my arm stands up. And if it's a bad color, the hair on my bottom of my arms are like, it's like pricklies. It's like, it would like cause blood. It's that like exaggerated tough. It's like, what the fuck? I've seen like just weird shit. Like I just didn't think I was like, I'm crazy. I have to be crazy. Like, and I was going to doctors for it. I was literally going to see psychologists and shit. Cause I told my mom and dad about it when I was a kid and man, that was a mistake. because holy shit, they tried to overdiagnose the shit out of that one. Next thing you know, they're fucking, it's his eyes. No, it's his fucking brain. No, he's crazy. Oh, that's what I was waiting to hear.
Neurological issues, psychosis, psychotic. This is immediately what they go to now. They no longer accept the spiritual realm as real. And it is.
And my parents are very holy, so I was very surprised when that happened. But anyway, long story short, about after everything happened to me in the military, and I've had all the brain surgeries and the neck surgeries and everything else.
And died 7 times. Minus
all that. That's another big part of it. I found out that actually plays a big part of it. If you've died before and you're alive again, that has a lot to do with it. Your conduit supposedly, I guess, you have a stronger bond with the extra perceptual realm.
Yeah. And it's, and I don't call them near-death experiences. They're death experiences because near death, you don't actually die, right? Yeah. You come close.
4 minutes without a heartbeat. But I can tell you right now.
You don't actually die.
You're dead.
When you're dead for 4 minutes without a heartbeat, then that's a death experience. You can come back, but that's a death experience.
Now, hold on. Truth junkie, you're jumping ahead of it. Get out of my brain, man. You're right there, dude.
Yes.
And you do. You might actually do. There's weird things like I've noticed.
We'll get to that.
I've noticed even more different things. There's weird shit going on. Like I've noticed a lot of different shit just within the last.
Truth Junkie said, my wife swears I have healing hands, though. She gets migraines and says they can dissipate with contact of my hands. I've been able to do that since I was a child. I've healed more. This is why he's still alive. Our son also sees auras, our youngest, and he's an incredibly
he's starting to
empath and a medium. Our oldest son also sees colors around people, and he opposite of an empath. As an empath feels the emotions of everyone around them. Our oldest son can manipulate the emotions of people around him. So our youngest, I had to teach him how to shield because he was constantly bombarded with other people's emotions to the point where he could not differentiate between his own emotions and their emotions. So he was constantly feeling anger and fear and frustration, and he didn't know why. And it caused him to be angry and have fear and frustration. And he didn't know why. And it was brutal. Homeschooling him for a year was probably the best thing we could have done because now he's learned how to, I taught him how to shield, and he's learned how to differentiate those emotions. So now he can help people. He can identify that this person is angry or this person is afraid, and he can talk to them and help them work through it. Where our older son can see people's emotions rather than feel them, and he can manipulate those emotions however he sees fit, which can be a little scary sometimes. He loves to mess with his brother. And his brother is incredibly receptive to it, being such a strong empath. So it's, the children have their own gifts.
Now, in the dreams, like the one thing I've noticed about, because I see there's questions about the dreams. My dreams are very, very real, but they don't feel like dreams. You know, when you wake up from a dream, you kind of forget parts of it, like immediately, almost immediately, like specific details are gone. Like the way something touched or the way something felt or the way you were sitting or this generic scenery around you, for instance. That is all amplified. It's perfect. That's the way I explained it. It's perfect. When I come down, I always say that I go up there for the dream, because when I wake up down here, it's really loud. It's really noisy, very confusing. There's all sorts up there. It's perfect. It's clear. It's pristine. You understand everything. Everything said to you is understood, felt. It's like, it's so clear. It couldn't be any more clear. And then you wake up back down here and it's so loud and there's so much other bullshit going on. It's like, can I go back there? Because this is not the way it is up there. It's so much better up there. It's like, wow. And I don't know if that's heaven. I don't know what the fuck that is. I can tell you this much. It's not this reality. wherever I go, I remember every part of it. I remember exactly how it felt, what I felt, what I heard, things I said, things that were said to me. I remember every part of it. So it's not a dream, because dreams I always come back from and I always forget shit. I mean, how many dreams have you ever had? How many dreams do you remember, Kyle?
Like lately they've been more vivid. But I remember them for maybe 2 minutes after I wake up, and then they kind of disappear. But yeah, it's kind of interesting what you said earlier about, the dreams kind of laying out the day ahead. I've always thought there was significance to dreams, but unless you practice writing in a dream journal or writing down or trying to lucid dream, things like that, it's usually pretty hard to remember the specifics. You can remember maybe like minute details, but after a couple of days, they're gone.
A known Lone Ranger, he told me, he just said, keep a recorder. Well, that's why I got this stupid thing. This records my movement at night when I'm sleeping. And I've noticed like one thing about 2 o'clock in the morning, I wake up every morning at 3 a.m. I don't know why. Every morning at 3 a.m. I wake up and I'm wide awake. And I have to like basically coax myself back to sleep for about another hour, because my alarm goes off, I know, in another hour and a half after that. So I'm like, all right, I got to wait. I got to go back to sleep eventually. But I wake up every night every morning at 3 a.m. I am wide awake and I'm perfectly clear and lucid, and I know everything that's happened. And there's
also a witching hour too.
Been a couple times that I've heard voices when I woke up at 3 a.m.
Yeah, that's
I've heard my true name at 3 a.m. and I've heard the gong at 3 a.m.
The bell, the true bell.
Whatever the fuck it is. It sounds like a gong. It sounded like a gong to me. And I've also heard the howl. And that's the newest one. I don't know if anybody else has ever heard the howl before, but it's not like a dog's howl. It almost reminded me of has anybody what was the name of the fucking movie where the guy, it was like in a futuristic place, and they like, this guy, he had this like 5-bladed fucking like ninja star. It was big though. It was bigger than a ninja star. And like he would throw it around, and like the thing, it was like this magical instrument to kill this beast. I think it was called Krull. Like back in the 80s, the movie Krull.
Yep.
Do you remember the beasts that made that really weird noise? They were like the soldiers of the Dark Army that were going after the guys that were on that or the quest to go kill them. But they made that weird noise. It kind of makes that noise. It's not like a beast, I would say, that I've ever heard. It's something like, it's weird. It makes a noise. And I'm always, whenever I wake up, I'm like, holy shit, what the hell was that? And I'm looking around the room like, is that one of the dogs?
Yeah.
Did you fart, dog?
A non-Lone Ranger. Yes. Someone spoke his true name. And I used to dream all the time. I mean, in fact, I had a lot of reoccurring dreams from the time that I was a small child. I dreamed before we moved from New York to Connecticut when I was about 4 or 5, 4. But even before we moved, I had this dream that I was in my mom's office, which was different from the one that she worked in at that time. It was this big brick building, and it was up on a hill, and at the bottom of the hill, there was a pond with a willow tree next to it. And in my dream, there was a fire in the office, and we jumped out the window, and we ran down the hill to the pond and stood under the tree. And I had this dream over and over and over again. And when we moved to Connecticut, my mom went to work at this building, and it was that office, that same office. The fire never happened, but I had that dream for years, right up. And in my dream, I was probably 8 or 9 when the fire happened. And I had that dream right up until the point I was at that age. And then once I got older than that, the dream stopped. So I knew it was maybe an alternate timeline dream, a different possibility, something like that. I heard my bell in 2020.
Yeah, the Nantin, I can never pronounce that one.
an Antonok noise?
Yes, that's the one from the Indians, right?
Yeah. So in 2020, I got woken up at 3:00 in the morning. Meg was at the firehouse, and to the sound of this bell in my head. And it was the loudest, purest, clearest thing I'd ever heard in my entire life. And I was like, what the hell was that? And I didn't know what it was, but I knew it wasn't, I knew it was in my head. It wasn't anything in the house. And that was really what started me down my spiritual journey, because there was something greater than I. There was something greater than all of us, that there really was something more than us that could communicate with us in some way, shape, or form, whatever it was. And it made me feel very humble hearing that in my head, but not insignificant. It made me feel significant, not insignificant. You know, they say like they don't want to talk about aliens because, you know, if we're the only ones in the universe, then we're important. But if we're not, then you feel more insignificant. That's not true. Knowing that there is something greater out there and that it can communicate with you makes you feel significant.
I think it drives you to move forward, to make communication with that. Yeah. With that being or that noise, so to speak.
And that's what started me down my journey, hearing that bell. And then shortly thereafter, I found a picture that looked just like me, and it blew me away. And we looked it up, and it was Maria Orsic. Well, it's on the picture. Her name is Maria Orsic.
No, you looked it up.
I looked it up, and I started looking into Maria Orsic. I had no idea who it was.
And mind you, folks, she hadn't even shown me this picture yet.
And I found that she was one of the founders of the Vril Society in Germany in the 1930s. And I thought that was very interesting because that's where my family's from.
And this picture, folks, just for your edification, I'm going to bring it up here in a second. Hopefully I still have it. I'm pretty sure I do.
Yeah. So I start digging into this research, and I'm like, what is the Vril? And there we go.
That's right? The picture right there. So hold on. Turn your head like this.
Yep.
Look back over your shoulder.
Your profile picture. Yeah.
I want to get it right. There we go. Look back over your shoulder. The other way. There you go, dork. So that's Maria Orsic and the brown. And
I didn't know that was Maria Orsic.
That's my wife right there.
That was your profile picture.
No, that would be Maria.
Yeah, that's Maria Orsic. So I started doing some research, and I always like to go back in researching the Vril. Where was the first time we heard of the Vril? And I found this book called The Coming Race, and it was written in 1892, and it was dropped off anonymously at this tiny little publisher in England. And somehow, all of a sudden, it gained a global publication. And
some 380,000 books had been sold, folks.
And a completely anonymous writer. And the premise of the story is that these guys go spelunking, and there's an earthquake, and they fall through a crack in the earth, and they fall down into hollow earth. And one of them dies on impact, and the other one is injured, but he's rescued by this race of people, very tall, angelic looking, blonde hair, blue eyes, that have amazing powers. They're telepathic, telekinetic. The women have the ability to both heal and destroy. They're more powerful than the men. It's a matriarchal society. Not to say that the men don't have power, but the women are more powerful. They're incredibly learned. They have all this technology, and they kind of treat him as a pet. And at the end of it, he tells them, because they're an antediluvian society in this story, they tell him that they escaped into the hollow earth just before the flood, to escape the flood. So, and at the end of the story, he says that there'll come a time when they will outgrow their space below the earth and go back to reclaim the land above. Okay. So I found that fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I started looking into the Vril Society, and I started doing some research, and I started putting out questions online. Well, I made my profile picture Maria's picture, and I got a couple hits off and on. And one of those actually put me in touch with the current Vril Society here in America, which I didn't even know existed. And that's how I ended up talking to the numbered one. And I won't say his name, but they don't even call them the numbered ones. I can't say what they actually call them. That's the closest I can come to. And cannot reveal. And I was asked to join the Vril Society. This person that I spoke with had met Maria. He was a child at the time. And he knew about her lost baby. And I had already spoken to my mother, showed her the picture, and she told me, that's your great grandmother. How do you have that picture? Where'd you find that picture? And I'm like, what do you mean that's my great grandmother?
Okay.
And
mind you, folks, when this conference Jamaica, and we're on the beach,
and I got her really
and
drunk.
Her mom's sitting down there, and she looks at her mom. She goes, "Who is this?"
And this is the picture of Maria Orsic, correct?
Maria. Yep. And her mom, yes. And her mom looks at the picture and she goes, "That's your grandmother." And she goes,
great grandmother. Yeah.
She goes, "Why are you talking to me? Talk to him. He knows it all." And I was like, "Fuck, thanks for the bus, Mom."
Because my died, because of course Mick and I have been together, for basically our entire lives. And my grandfather passed away shortly after Mick and I got married, but they'd had a strong relationship for a long time before that. So, and there were conflicting stories in my family growing up, because one person would hear one thing and another person would hear another thing. But when I was a kid, we lived in London, and we would go visit our family that was still in Germany, in Bavaria. And I knew where our family had come from. And I knew that the more historical part of the story from my grandfather's line, because my grandfather's grandfather was King Ludwig II of Bavaria. And his grandmother was a gypsy, a Romanian gypsy witch, a woodcutter's daughter, actually. Now, King Ludwig had a dozen of them, and he built a whole bunch of little mini castles, chalets, villas, all around Germany, all around Bavaria. And he installed a mistress in each one, and he would go and visit them one after another. And he had a whole bunch of little bastard babies.
17, if I remember.
17 bastard babies.
No, 7.
He also built Neuschwanstein Castle. He was the founder of the Bavarian Illuminati. He's no joke. So he never had any legitimate heirs, because by the time his marriage was arranged and he got married, he had syphilis and died shortly thereafter and couldn't produce any legitimate heirs. And back in those days, after a generation or two, they might pay attention to their bastard children for a few years or whatever, but they didn't really support them. They didn't really pay attention to them. But some of them, they weren't acknowledged, but people knew who they were, So that's kind of how my grandfather's family was. So they knew that he was royal bloodline, but they didn't live in the castle anymore. It's still in the family. They actually lived in Vienna. And my grandfather was warned before the Anschluss that Hitler specifically was coming for the royal bastards, was coming for the rest of the royal bloodlines that weren't controlled. And that my grandfather should get as much of his family out of Austria as he could. So he left. He did. He went to New York. And the crazy thing was, and I grew up, like when we went to Germany, went and visited the castle. I actually found Maria's journal when I was a kid and I read it, not having any idea whose it was, not putting two and two together until just maybe 6 months ago. Going back in my memory.
About a year ago.
Maybe a year ago.
It was a year ago.
Okay. To recall what the journal said. And the premise was, well, Maria had a baby in secret. She was engaged. And, it wasn't like it was a bastard. She was afraid her baby would be used against her. So she hid the baby, adopted it out to some family friends. And most of the Vril, actually all of the Vril society thought that she'd sent the baby to the Caribbean to live in the West Indies, but she actually sent it to live with, hidden in plain sight, family friends in Bavaria. And my grandmother grew up thinking that she was the legitimate child of this entirely other family. Come the war, when Maria warned my grandfather to get out, it was with the condition that he go back and rescue her daughter. And he was probably the first person to know that, Dunley joined the army, actually joined the OSS, and told them that he was already married and that his wife was back in Germany. So they dropped him into Germany in the middle of the war, and he went up into the mountains of Bavaria with Maria and got my grandmother and married her and sent both of them back to the States, both Maria and my grandmother. Maria went to Tennessee and she founded the Vril Society in Tennessee. And my grandmother went to New York and lived with my grandfather's family. And she was at that point, 6. She was pregnant. My grandfather came home 6 months later. She was about, Maria went back at the end of the war to try and rescue some of her sisters in the Vril. And she was shot in the back in the mountains trying to escape. But no, she did not build a spaceship and fly away to Venus like most conspiracy people think. She was rescued and she left. She did, however, build the first anti-gravity drive. She did channel plans from the Vril, and they gave her their technology, and she built the first anti-gravity drive, which was used in the Vril ship that the Nazis currently have in Antarctica.
The Bell.
The Bell.
The Glocka.
Yeah, the Glocka. And the Glocka is, when we saw the plans, when We the People Radio had us on, and James pulled out the plans from, what the fuck was that website?
Lockheed. Ingersoll Lockwood.
Ingersoll Lockwood website. If you go to the Ingersoll Lockwood website, you can pull up the Bell plans, or you used to be able to pull up Bell plans.
There's hidden links all over there.
They change them all the time, but the Bell plans were up there for the longest time. And we saw the Bell plans, I was like, wait a minute.
And I said, no, I know that handwriting. I've seen that before.
Both
because I'd seen it in Maria's journal. So I knew it was that kind of synced everything up for me. And then after we had that experience in September, because that all happened before or kind of ongoing, was when I heard my true name for the first time. Again, woke me up in the middle of the night, 3:00 in the morning, to the sound of my name, but it wasn't my name, right? Like I knew it was my name, but it wasn't what everybody else calls me. So I knew it was my true name. And then we didn't hear from Gabriel you did off and on, but I didn't really hear from Gabriel for quite some time until we moved. And then we went down to the border. And we were really excited to meet Justin in person because Justin had been told that he was the vessel for Uriel, as Mick is the vessel for Gabriel. And then when they sparked up CERN on July 5th, after that, Gabriel's here all the time. He's probably come and talk to me. Now all the time. It's like I have conversations with him, and I'm not scared anymore. I'm not like, now he's a dick, but he's become a friend. And I miss him sometimes when he's gone. Sometimes he's really annoying, but I can call him in my head during the day. I'll ask him a question. I'll talk to him, and he can always hear whatever I'm thinking, even if I don't direct it at him. And he will come to me that night almost without fail. He'll come to me that night and we'll have a whole conversation. And I know it's not Mick because he says things to me that Mick would never in a million years say. Never in a million years.
Such as
after Justin killed himself, and he came to me that Sunday, and we had the whole conversation. And he said this is why we choose Catholics, because they believe that suicide is a mortal sin. And I said, it's not a mortal sin. And he said, no, God gave you free will. How could you possibly be punished for exercising that which God gave you? You would never say that because you believe suicide is a mortal sin.
Yep.
So, so Gabriel talks to us all the time. But when we were down at the border, we were driving down to the border, we actually rented an RV while we were when we were in Phoenix, and drove it down to the border. But we drove out there, so we had the pickup truck. So I was driving the pickup truck and he was driving the RV, and I popped on this podcast, Sarah Westall, Business Game Changers. And it was this guy, Paolo Biglino. Okay. And he's an Italian translator, and he translated the Old Testament from the original Hebrew. And he says that God is not mentioned not once in the Bible, in the Old Testament. I'm sorry, what? No, yeah, God is not mentioned.
This guy is pretty interesting, this Biglini character. And you played a video of him speaking and someone translating because he speaks Italian. And it was fascinating.
Yep.
Fascinating.
Oh, yeah. So he says that the Elohim, the Elohim are mentioned in the Bible. The Elohim are not God, right? And as the Elohim are mentioned in the Bible, they're mentioned both in the singular and the plural. So they absolutely cannot be one God if they're mentioned in the plural. Mm-hmm. So I was really excited about all this information. And Paul also said that the Elohim genetically engineered us from Homo erectus and their own DNA. And we Homo sapiens came out of that, and that we were genetically engineered to be essentially slaves,
yeah.
but to take care of the earth, to do the manual labor that the Elohim no longer wanted to do. Okay. So I thought that rang closer to true for me than a lot of other things that I'd heard. So I talked to Gabriel about it because, right? Who else would I go to?
You got the source right there. Talk to him. I mean, I would do the same thing.
Right?
I'd be like, so your first question is the Earth flat. Second question is the Elohim.
What are we, Elohim or Vril?
Yes. So
no wonder he's kind of a dick sometimes. He's like, this lady's asking the wrong questions.
And he told you heard in that recording, he told me stop questioning everything, but I never stop questioning. I constantly question him. And he
said, stop questioning everything, but he said you got to ask the right questions, which I found fascinating, because it's like, well, what then? Logically, I would ask, well, what are the right questions? You can't really ask that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like asking the genie for more wishes.
Exactly.
You can't do that.
So I asked Gabriel about it. I called him, and he came in to make that night, and I was like, so I've learned about the Elohim. Like, what are the Elohim? And I was really excited about it. And
holy shit. All right. Wait a minute. Hold on. I got to go to this real quick.
Hold on.
Always in Texas.
No, Yahweh is not the source. Yahweh is one of the Elohim.
Hold on a second. Give me a sec. I got to pause this real quick because I can't fucking read this that fast.
Okay.
Always say,
favor the Abramovich line. Mm-hmm.
All the Bohemian Gypsy relatives moved here, from what I understand, but I didn't even know my great grandparents met in a brothel until 3 years ago. You have to have someone from a bloodline to drive the ships.
Yep.
It's all touch driven.
Yep.
I've had conversations with Raphael. He doesn't live here. He lives in the cliff I live on.
Yep.
I'm going to shut up now.
No, that's absolutely right.
What's that from, Mick? What are you reading?
But that's on in the foxhole.
Pilled, always in Texas, is talking about, I guess, family.
I can't see those.
What I'm guessing. Yeah, you can't see that one. This one's on the other side. I'm looking at that. That's an interesting story.
Yeah.
Always in Texas.
Yep.
Don't ignore it.
Don't
One thing I've been told, and this is one thing, because like my kids, apparently they're getting their own messages because they too have their own job to do. And they told her that, like, I don't know, they thought it were demons or some shit. And I was like, yeah, don't ignore it. Talk to it. And they started talking to it and they realized that it's not a demon.
Yeah. So. Our kids have had experiences recently, except at night, and he has to sleep on them top. And he thought he at first thought it was demonic because he said it sounded like static in Aramaic. And it was kind of the staticky part that freaked him out, but we just told him, just talk to it, tune in. Cause I got really mad at Gabriel when he told me that and then the very next day, our youngest son told me he heard something in his head in a very scary voice say, welcome. And I got pissed at Gabriel. And I was like, you damn well, you better make sure my kids are protected. You leave my kids out of this, or I will exercise my free will and tell you all to go to hell. You can pound sand and we will not play your games anymore. If my kids are not guaranteed to be protected, absolutely not. And he said, no, they're protected now. They have their own roles to play in the future, but they're protected now. Why do you think that's something evil coming at them? I said, well, that was their perception. He said, well, they're wrong. He loves to tell me I'm wrong. He loves to tell people they're wrong, by the way. It's like one of his favorite things is for Gabriel is to tell people they're wrong, especially me. But
that sounds a lot like a you thing.
So we told the kids this, and they're actually, our oldest son has had multiple conversations with this thing that wakes him up at night. But anyway, so when I found out about the Elohim, I asked Gabriel, and we had a whole long conversation about it. And he told me in a lot of ways I was wrong, because one thing Paulo had said was that the angels were the lowest caste of the Elohim. They were like the managers, okay? God made the Elohim, and then the Elohim made us, and the angels were the lowest caste of the Elohim. And Gabriel was like, oh, hell no. No. That is not how that worked. No, we are entirely separate from them. We are not Elohim. The Elohim put themselves up as gods. They are the Sumerian gods, the Egyptian gods, the Jewish God, all the different gods that people worshipped, deities that people worshipped around or across the world for the last 10,000 years have all been Elohim that put themselves up as gods, right? They controlled. They each chose their own people. Our Bible comes from Yahweh, which was he chose the Israelites as his people. The Sumerian gods were Elohim, the Egyptian gods were Elohim. They're all Elohim. Okay. And they did have great technology. They did genetically engineer us. Okay. And then just last night, Gabriel didn't come and talk to me directly. Gabriel talked to Mick because Mick can pretty much talk to him at will. At this point, he's here all the time. And
trust me, I thought it was fucking crazy. Still think I'm crazy.
And he told us something really interesting, because we had told Josh we would do this show and that we were going to tell the angel story. And it was almost like, because I didn't call him this time, like Gabriel came to talk to us and both of us, because understand when he comes inside Mick to talk to me, Mick doesn't remember any of it. Like Mick is gone. So if he wants to talk to both of us, he has to talk to me through Mick. He has to talk to Mick, and then Mick relays it to me. In this case, there was so much information that actually Mick wrote it all down. He took notes. And then Gabriel made him burn it. But that's okay, because I remember it. So here's the story we got last night. God first made the Vril. The Vril do exist. They are a race, the original intelligent race on this planet. And they do live in the hollow earth below us.
No, he didn't say that. The Elohim and the Vril are at the same level, essentially.
But the Vril came first.
But the Vril are the older version of the Elohim, is what he told us. He said that they were the older version of the Elohim and that they were kind of sent here and they've been here. And it was almost as if they were cast out of where they used to be. The Elohim left.
Like the fallen angels.
And the Elohim returned. And they said that while they were producing humans or making humans, they found the Vril again. And the Vril were still on Earth. They'd survived. They were completely left for dead. But they survived. They just hid from the Elohim because they knew the Elohim were back to kill them. So supposedly the Vril hid. Now, where the Vril hid, he didn't really get into. He didn't say that, oh, they went back to Hollow Earth or anything like that. So there's no confirmation of Hollow Earth. Don't let her fool you. However, he said they hid. They're not amongst us. Okay. Well, that only leaves a couple places they could have gone. They either all of a sudden became fucking trees or the fuckers live underneath us, which is possible.
Or in mountains, or I mean, let me ask this:
Atlantis and the ocean. I mean, they could have been Atlantis, and Atlantis fell to the water.
Since they are an ancient race, could they have perhaps entered another parallel dimension? And if I'm going too far off, let me know.
No. There's a possibility.
Absolutely.
Because there's one thing I've realized about him. One thing I have noticed about him, he's very. I don't want to say this because I could be wrong, but it seems to me like he's very transdimensional because he talks about things like they've already happened here. But then he always corrects himself by saying, well, man has free will. It's kind of like, well, you're fucked if you do and you're fucked if you don't. It's almost
like some sort of, when you look at things like time and events happening, there's the linear timeline, there's the cyclical timeline, and then there's the stacked timeline where all things are happening all at once on different planes, right? So that could be some sort of explanation for that.
Well, that's part of it.
Our understanding is that now with this new, when they brought CERN back up, the timelines have permanently split.
I think this happened a while ago. I mean, they were splitting.
They no longer cross where they used to.
Mm-hmm.
They were splitting, but
since 2012, now they're permanent. It used to be they were splitting, and then they could come back together.
But they looked more like a wave. They didn't look like two definitive lines.
Like this kind of thing, like overlaps, right?
Look more like this. They were kind of doing this. They were going back and forth. They were touching, and they were coming back out, and everything else going up and around. Now they're two definitive lines running parallel of each other, which means you have a split dimension. Which means in any technical shape and form, you could look across, and like we were just talking about it last night. They had taken, was it last night that we were talking about the cell, and they used the proton from CERN to basically what they did was they took a proton beam, they sent it in there kind of like as a diffuser, and it diffused the beam of light that hit this proton molecule. And proton molecules shake, they move, they make movement, they move back and forth. Well, if you look at it on a like if you looked at a blip scale, it moves like this. It makes peaks and valleys and everything else like all the way down.
Like a sine wave or something like that.
Exactly. So what they did was they took a proton wave and matching the wave exactly. So where there was a peak and a valley, there was a peak and a valley. It completely goes to a straight line because nothing mathematically, that becomes a new zero. So for one blip, they showed what they called an echo or a shadow of a proton, of a neutron.
Another dimension.
That kind of shifted from itself. So if you think about a neutron right here, there was a separate neutron right here of the same neutron in two different times.
Yeah. Well, that's where you get into like antimatter and dark energy and things like that, where string theory, right? where there for every molecule
they
of
couldn't
matter.
control it.
Sorry,
Has
go ahead.
an equal and opposite, an equal and opposite reflective matter, whatever. But they couldn't control it, so they didn't have enough power to control it. So the two snap back together. So they weren't actually able to split the timeline completely, but they were able to get a glimpse of it.
Yeah,
so they know that there is another dimension and they can make it happen, but they have to use a transmission. It's called transmission interference, and basically you're zeroing the plane, so everything comes apart in a sound wave. So everything separates in that sound wave is what they're trying to say.
But anyway,
and there is a theory to it. Does it work? Who knows?
But all right,
they turned it on though.
So what Gabriel told us last night is that the Vril were here first. God made the Vril. The Elohim were to be essentially the stewards of the planet. And then the Elohim made us to take over the manual labor, essentially. Okay. The Elohim left. The Vril were still here. And then when the Elohim came back, they found the Vril had mated with the humans that the Elohim had created. And those were the Nephilim. So the Nephilim were actually the hybrid of the Vril and the human, which is Homo erectus and Elohim DNA. Now, the Elohim and the Vril are sworn enemies. And I think perhaps the Vril are known as the fallen angels in the Bible. And I think the Elohim wrote it that way to give them a bad name because they are their sworn enemies.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't know on that one. But I do know that I do know they exist. I do know they're real. I know there's something greater than us. And their war that is currently going on, so they exist. The Vril, the Elohim, the Nephilim, they exist. And their war, the war between the Vril and the Elohim is still ongoing.
And we're stuck in the middle.
I don't.
We are
honestly. I don't know if we're in the middle of it. Honestly, I don't even think they look at us. I was thinking about this last night after this little fucking, I guess, question and answer session she had. But one of the things that struck me as odd was like, I just got into this too because Josh brought up a great point that he finally figured out something that I was actually talking about a while ago, but he brought up the whole point about like in the Q post, you can take names out, replace names in the Q post. And I think there's a lot to that. And I don't fucking care.
I know.
I think the Bible is kind of the same way. If you remove the Israelites and put the Elohim and you remove the Christians and you put the Vril, you almost create that same timeline all over again. If you replace Jesus and come up with an Elohim character, what if what we wrote down thousands of years ago in the Bible is what we saw happening in front of us? And was this big thing between the Vril and the Elohim? And they were fighting each other, and this is what we witnessed as humans. And we wrote it down, and somehow it got miscombobbled and misconstrued into a religion. And now we believe a wartime religion instead of what the reality is, which is they don't give a shit about us at all. That we're just like innocent bystanders in this.
We are pawns.
And we're watching.
You say wartime religion. It goes back to the what they called the cargo cults, right? In World War II, when a little island village would just be chilling, hunting and gathering and just living on their little fucking island, and planes would fly over and drop cargo, or ships would sink and cargo would float to shores. These people assumed these planes to be and these ships, because they brought cargo with food and supplies, that these were gods giving us blessings, right? So that's literally a wartime religion, was these cargo cults. And then I guess while I have interrupted you, my apologies, I want to ask one thing. You had mentioned earlier that the Vril created the Elohim. The Elohim created the human.
God created the Vril, and God created the Elohim.
Okay. But the Elohim created the humans to do the manual labor. So now that we're kind of at this precipice of technology where we have AI on the precipice of perhaps ascending beyond our control, would that kind of add to this kind of conflict where we as humans have now created another entity to do the manual labor for us? Do y'all see any connection with that? I know it's kind of out there, but it's just where my mind went.
No, and if you think about it, we have become such poor stewards of the planet over the past few generations that why would they even keep us around anymore? But yes, we've now there is something else. We're superfluous now, right?
We're extra.
Yeah. What do they really need us for? And now where the angels fit into this. No, go ahead.
I was going to say one more thing. This is something that I had heard, and it's been on my mind for over a year now, if not more than that. Was you had mentioned that these the Vril and the Elohim, I think you said specifically the Vril were antediluvian, right? And you talk about us being bad stewards of the earth, and that kind of brings up, the climate change narrative and things like that. This is something that's been on my mind for a long time, is that the chemical engineering that we're seeing, the chemtrails, the stratospheric injections, all of these things that seem to be accelerating the quote unquote climate change. What if the elites, the powers that be, whoever, perhaps the Vril, perhaps the Elohim, they're trying to restore the climate to an antediluvian climate where they can thrive in a climate that works for them, right? Maybe we're getting to that point and they want to stop it at the right spot, with the warming, with the temperatures, whatever it may be, the carbon, right? Because we know that the carbon count if you want to believe it, the dinosaur times was so high. That's why animals and plants got so big, was from this carbon. So maybe that's a thought that's been on my mind, is that this whole climate change narrative is to stop the climate change at a specific time to kind of hold it in that sweet spot of the antediluvian climate. And that's a long shot, I know. But I'm just wondering if that relates to anything that y'all have experienced or heard.
What if it's got nothing to do with the climate, though? What if you're going way too far off the deep end with the climate? And the only reason I say this is I guess I have a little bit of a gift because it was given to me, and in the way that it was said, I can kind of translate the way it was said, the way, body posture, it was more, but that it wasn't that it was what we're doing to the planet is wrong. We're not working out the way we should have.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know if that is based on belief or if that's based off of, well, you have greenhouse gases rising up and you're dumping shit in the oceans and you're doing this. You took a shit in your backyard, so you shouldn't have done that. How dare you? Bad boy, put your hand out, slap that. Like, we're not being good stewards in that. We're not blessing off in green technology, or if it's just the way humanity is. I mean, just looking at humanity today, look how fucked up we are. We got some dude in New York City who's walking around punching people in the back of the head when they're not even looking at them. We got people doing fucked up shit left, right, and center, killing people, whacking. It doesn't matter what the story is. I can go the story and you can tell me one worse. We're not even to the point of one-upping anymore. And that is where the problem is, I think, with mankind, is that I think that's what, and the angels are a separate being. They're a completely separate race. The demons are as well. They're amongst the same race. They're outside.
They are interdimensional.
They are nudgers, as we were told. They were nudgers. They're the ones, like, when you think you should go do something and it's a really good idea and it makes you feel really good, that's one of them doing this. Hey, maybe you should go do that. Giving you the nudge to push you to do it.
Either
If
good or
you're
bad,
the type that says, yeah, I really,
Yeah.
exactly. And maybe I shouldn't really go do that. Well, that's a demon doing that. They are on our plane. They can only influence our decisions. They cannot actually decide for us. We have that belief of free will. Therefore, we're allowed to make that choice for ourselves. However, the way that it was explained to me was maybe the environment isn't so much the situation. Maybe it's mankind is the situation. So, and I think that's the way we should look at it. I don't know. That's my take.
Because as Gabriel said, God has faith in humanity, but you've done something that's
Well, he said that humanity lost faith in God. That's
Pissed them off.
another issue.
yeah, there is that too. And I think the angels now have more access, more ability to directly interfere, because we're coming to a point, we're coming to a precipice of something.
I don't know if they can interfere as much as
Influence.
I think they influence more right now.
Influence.
They're still doing more influence right now. They're not doing because they cannot technically physically interfere on our plane until they're called for. They, according to everything that I've read in the Bible and everywhere else and every other religious text that says anything about angels or anything, because I've done a lot of research into this, folks. There's just nothing else out there. I think there's like four or five other books that I've read about people who had angelic,
Again, they don't come around a lot.
angelic experiences where they were visited by an angel or possessed by an angel. Angelic possession is actually a thing. I didn't even know that. She went and looked it up. She's like, yeah, actually it's a real thing. Look at this. There's like 20 posts in here about people who have had angelic experiences. Truth Junkie. There's been a screaming in the depths of my soul since the awakening that Yahweh is not the source of souls. I don't believe he is.
Yeah, Yahweh is an Elohim. He's not the source of our souls. He is not God.
I think God is something else. I think whatever I'm involved, whatever I'm a part of, whatever I get to see, whatever little bits of information I've gotten, I have definitely gotten the distinct idea that it's not about us. There's something else going on, but it's not about us.
A non-lone ranger says that you need to have a talk with Archangel Nathaniel. It might be an interesting discussion. That would be great if Gabriel wasn't such a jealous bitch, because he really doesn't let a whole lot of people talk to him.
We have some evidence in the text for these angels and archangels to have beef with each other. You know, they are all on the same team, but it's a bunch of, let's say, star athletes competing for the Heisman, even though they're on the same team, right? They want to make their creator the most proud. And so through that comes trickery, conflict, things like that. So I'm asking, like, am I right on that? That we've seen that, you know, there's
history behind them that we don't know about. There's things I don't know about that he tells me all the time, and I'm just like, yeah, what are you talking about?
Because they're not perfect either. Only God is perfect. None of God's creations are perfect. Even the angels are not perfect. And I'm sure I will get bitched at for that later, but I don't care because it's true.
Gabriel's going to pop in later tonight and be like, bitch, I am perfect. What are you talking about?
Exactly. But
it'll be just another soul. I mean, I'm just a soul slut, so it doesn't really matter all that much.
A soul slut, dude. That's a t-shirt right there. Soul slut. Make the t-shirt. Oh, I lost you. We're jammed up here. Check 1, 2. Can anyone still hear me? Oh, hello?
okay.
Yeah. There we go. We're back.
There we go.
We're back.
I know it.
Just saying, though, you should make us a Patriot Party podcast t-shirt that just says soul slut on it. I would buy one 100%.
I just it's crazy. Well, he doesn't let me talk to a lot of other ones. I also went and looked. I did a lot of research into what all the angels are. The weird thing is the one I found is, well, the one story I did find about all the angels, and one of the bigger ones is the well-known one. Gabriel's a messenger. He is the one that transmits the message from God to the humans. He actually tries to save mankind. He tried to save mankind once before, which obviously worked out to no avail. A matter of fact, he was killed. I don't know if he was killed and God, reclaimed his
vessel was killed.
Angelic, whatever, but he was killed. I mean, he's an angel, so who gives a fuck? He went right back to heaven anyway. He does exist. I don't know in the fight or in the fray, I guess you would call it, because it's really a fray between the two, between the Vril and the Elohim. I'm not sure who's the bigger, baddest, badass of them all. I know this much. When I talk to Gabriel about it, he is very, it doesn't matter. And I don't know if it on for what we're experiencing or if we don't have anything to do with that. You know what I mean? Like, he left me asking questions. Like, I don't know if I can actually do something that maybe might change something that all of a sudden all this shit will end. No, it's nothing like that from what I know. From what I know right now, it has very little to do with us. It has more to do with what else is going on. And what that is, you got me.
Oh, we're frozen again.
There we go.
Oh, you're back. You're back. There you are.
Okay, good. So the few things I've been told about what's to come. Well, my current purpose is to find others that have had these experiences, to find the chosen. And that's why I asked those two questions. That is, have you ever been woken up in the middle of the night by the sound of a bell in your head? And have you ever heard your true name? And those two questions are pretty telling. And I've been told to continue to do that until my next purpose is revealed, or until my next purpose
Can I
comes
ask
to
real
pass.
quick, you guys have mentioned the true name before. What is that when you say true name?
It's like someone calls your name, but it's not, it's your name, but it's not the name that everyone else calls you, right? Like your name, we all call you Kyle, but that's not God's name for you.
Let's say God called you or named you David.
Yeah.
But your real name is Kyle.
Okay.
But what wakes you up in the middle of the night isn't somebody calling you Kyle. It's somebody calling you David. And you're like, wait a minute.
Like you naturally respond as if they were calling your name. Okay. I understand now. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And on Lone Ranger, Josh is off tonight. We took over the show for him because he had some family stuff to take care of. And we invited our friend Kyle from the Big Dumb Podcast to come on. So I know you missed the beginning of it. So anyone else that's joined later, we are Mick and Vlynn from the Patriot Party Podcast, filling in for Josh tonight. And this is our good friend Kyle from the Big Dumb Podcast. So anyway, then
that helps.
I was told soon, too soon, and everything else I get is always in due time. This one was just too soon. The messenger will become the martyr, and it will be my job to tell the world who he really was. Okay. And I know it's because you wouldn't believe me until then anyway. And then, yeah, that's a scary one. And at some point I'll have to flee to the desert. So
some more questions. Yeah. We don't really have any answers. We just have more questions.
When I flee to the desert, he won't be with me.
Well, and I from what I remember from when we met in Amarillo, you were telling me that about this, fleeing to the desert scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And because you went to the border, you were in Arizona, you were literally in the desert. You did that question came up like, is this the time? Is this when right? Am I wrong in our conversation? I might remember it wrong.
It wasn't the time. It wasn't like, is this the time? But is this the person? It was, is this the preparation? Right. And it was, because the journey to the desert was an amazing angel experience in itself. We actually, it was supposed to be this big event. There was supposed to be like 30 or 40 of us. And when we got there, it was just us and one other person. And she quite literally is preparing a place for me in the desert for when I need to flee. So
we know that other people are getting the messages. We know other people are talking to these creatures, whatever they are, Elohim, angels, beasts, whatever you want to call them. We know there are others of you out there that are talking and having these experiences. Nobody's coming out and talking about it because you think the same thing I think, that you're fucking nuts, and that you're the only one experiencing this, and you're not. There's 14 of them total that I know of. There's a grand total of 32. There's 333 in total. Of the archangels, there's only 14. 17 of the normal angels. There's 333, and then the rest are what they call the battle angels, and they only come around for like when the shit gets really hairy, like break glass in case of war type shit. And the one thing, like I said, I did a lot of research into the angels themselves, just based on their stories. And they all have stories. They all have different timelines. And I thought that was odd that they all had different timelines. That's what kind of gave me the idea of more of an interdimensional being, because they all had different timelines. They said at the end of the world, when God is to take his wrath out against man, one of the angels that is seen riding directly over Jesus's right shoulder after he comes back as a baby, and in one day he becomes a full-grown male and ascends back into heaven and then returns with his army to destroy mankind. The first angel coming over his shoulder is fucking Gabriel.
Yeah, and actually,
Gabriel's one of the generals, one of the biggest general of all of God's armies, and I was just like,
when I
okay.
confronted Gabriel on the plane about me being pregnant at the time, and for those of you that want, I don't think I finished that part of the story. Shortly thereafter, my baby disappeared. Like one day I was pregnant, and the next day I wasn't. Like one day I was feeling the baby move. I had a positive pregnancy test, and then all of a sudden I wasn't getting bigger. I wasn't feeling moved. Gone. And at 4 months, like if I'd miscarried it, I've had miscarriages before. I had a miscarriage 11 weeks, and I held the baby in my hands. Like they don't just disappear. And yet this one did just disappear.
Oh my goodness. That's terrible, but also interesting that you never actually went through the full process of a miscarriage. That's fascinating, but terrible at the same time. You know what I mean?
So crazy. Wow. But, yeah. Oh yeah.
It was just odd. It was weird.
It was so weird. And then, but Gabriel told me that when my child is born, that he will grow to, he'll be snatched away from me, and he will come back after 3 days, as a full grown man riding the white horse. And I was like, well, then it definitely can't be in the next 10 months because you gave us 10 years. I mean, I know your sense of time is screwed up, but that's way off. And
right. Well, but maybe now, in 10, you know what I mean? 10 years,
So, yeah. Hey, maybe I'll be 52 getting pregnant with the son of man. Who knows?
Hey, with modern technology and your high level income, anything's possible. So, well, hey, real
high level of income.
Well, real quick, guys, I got to bounce out of here. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, we're going to wrap up soon. Nick's got to work in the morning.
Yeah, well, I'll real quick. I'll just plug my stuff and let you guys wrap up. But shout out to everybody in the chat. You guys have the best fans. And if you guys, obviously, I tried to contribute what I could, but this is y'all's story. This is your experience, and I just tried to hop in where I could. But thank you so much for the opportunity. As always, it's a pleasure. So for your people listening, you can check me out. The Big Dumb Podcast. Just search that, you'll find it. And thank you guys so much for this story. I want to get you guys on my show soon to kind of break this down a little bit, maybe get into a little more of the esoteric. That's a wrong word to use, but maybe more into the Vril society and how that connects, because I've got like 20 tabs open of every time y'all said something, I was typing it in, trying to search what was going on. And I think there's some research and connections to be made. So I'd love to do that with you guys sometime. I just want to say thank you guys so much, and shout out to the Red Pill Project. I appreciate them for having me on as well. And I'll see you guys soon. All right.
Yeah. sounds good.
Absolutely. Thank you.
We appreciate you coming on and being our sounding board.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love you
We're
guys.
not crazy.
You guys are literally the best. And God bless you both so much. Thank you.
All right, you too.
Say goodnight to your beautiful wife for us.
Yes.
Kyle,
I will.
Kyle's
Thank you, guys.
newly married, so congratulations to Kyle.
There we go. There we go. Well, thank you guys so much. I love you guys.
Happy world.
So you got it. All right. Have a good night, Kyle.
All right. We'll talk to you later, bud. All right.
All right.
So yeah, that kind of about wraps it up. We're pretty much to the end of it, but if you're hearing voices, and you swear to God you're hearing them, I wouldn't push it off. I don't think you're crazy. I hear them all the time. Just saying.
Yeah.
It's not nothing new for a long range nuts. It's crazy.
All right. Did anyone catch the full message from Gabriel yesterday? Because they froze for me. So Gabriel said that God made the Vril, and then God made the Elohim, and the Elohim made humans from Homo erectus and their DNA, and then the Elohim left. And while they were gone, the Vril mated with the humans, and that's where the Nephilim came from. And then the Elohim returned, and they found the Vril, and they found the Nephilim, and they didn't know the Vril were still here. And so they flooded the earth to try and kill the Vril. And that's where the flood comes from. The Nephilim survived. The Vril fled underground and survived. And they still walk among us. I think there are descendants of the Nephilim on this planet. And I think there are living Elohim on this planet. The ones that we talk about, lizard people, I think those might be the Elohim. The ones that, that were like, how is this person 80 years old and they look like they're 50, right? Oh, are they
Vanna White?
Yeah. Right? Maybe they're all Elohim.
I mean, maybe we're looking at this wrong. Maybe we think we're in the middle of it. We're not. Maybe we have too much self-importance. Maybe we think that we're part of this, and maybe we're not. Maybe we have nothing to do with it at all. Maybe this fight is between two other beings that we're not even a part of it. I just find it odd that you can replace certain things in the Bible, names and texts in different places, and you make a little change, or every time they say human or something like that, and you place Vril or Elohim in there, you can change the whole way the Bible sounds. And maybe the people who wrote the Bible were witnessing something that was not even happening to them. Maybe it was happening in front of them, and it kind of gains some. It explains some things. For instance, everybody asks a question about like the really big doors. Why are there all these buildings in Europe that have doors that are 12, 15, 20, 30 feet tall? How big were humans walking in and out of fucking buildings back then to have doors that big? How did they build them? Everybody asks that question. Well, what if the Vril were on the earth at that time? They're taller than us. It would make sense that to build this, and we talk about these cities that just sprung up overnight, and everybody's like, well, where do they get the technology to make that? Surely not hand tools. What if the Vril were here doing it with them? Or what if the Elohim were here doing it with them? Or what if the Nephilim, the offspring of the Vril and human contraception, maybe the Nephilim had something to do with it? It adds to that, I guess, that allure. So thinking about it the way we were thinking about it the other night when we were talking about it, I said that would make every human in existence right now on this planet neither Vril nor Elohim. We're Nephilim. We are the Nephilim. That's essentially, if you look at the way it boils down, we would be the Nephilim, because there wouldn't be a generation of humanity alive anymore. Because they all would have died. They all would have perished by now. So we're the Nephilim. And I don't know if that makes any more sense than the Nephilim being a hidden creature that lives underneath the earth, because it really doesn't. It doesn't add, it doesn't answer, it doesn't not answer. but it doesn't give any confirmation that either one is right, I guess. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, because it would mean that we are the Nephilim.
Or the RH negatives are the Nephilim and the RH positives are the Adamites.
It's just weird that every time that you go to, like, any time that you hear about this stuff, you always hear about the plus and the negative. There's always a positive and there's always a negative.
Yeah.
And no matter what, throughout history, there's always a positive, there's always a negative. Wherever there's a force, there's an equal and opposite reactionary force. The same as all of Newton's laws, but they're all laws. They're not like rules. They're not like prescribed like science. We know that this shit is real. Just like gravity, it's a theory. But all of this stuff is right there in front of us. Maybe we're just looking at it wrong. Maybe ultimately that's what the end of it is we're just looking at it wrong. Maybe if we looked at it, or we skewed our look just a little bit, it'd be a little different. We'd all see things a little different. I don't know.
The one thing I did ask Gabriel last night, I asked him specifically about the 10 years when he told me September 4th of last year that I have 10 years left. He said, you have 10 years left. 10 years from this day, September 4th. And so I asked him last night, because it started to bug me. Do I personally have 10 years left? Like, was he telling me the date that I'm going to die? Or does humanity have 10 years left? And he said, you, humanity, have 10 years left. So, and I told him I thought that was bullshit, because
maybe it's not.
The timelines aren't predetermined, because humans have free will. That's what he keeps telling us.
Well, maybe that's why he's being so
cagey.
Yeah, indescriptive about what the timeline is, because maybe
that he's not in charge of the timeline, that God's in charge of the timeline. So, yeah, I don't know. Texas Trout. So here's a question for y'all. What do you think?
I'm not sure what that says, to be honest with you. I'm the last person you should ask about it.
If you don't, I mean, I think only people that have specific designated angels hear their true name. And not everyone hears the bell either, because I think the bell is to wake you up, and some people are already awake. But if you know that you in this end time, in this end game that we're in, if you just know in your gut, you know in your soul that there is something greater and something that you're supposed to do, you're supposed to be doing right now, then do it. That's all I can tell you about that. Anyway.
All right. Well, we got to get out of here, folks, because I do have to go to work tomorrow morning. Either way, you can tune into us. Sunday is the next time we'll be on. And we didn't do this the other night. And I'm just going to take care of some quick housekeeping for our show, because I completely...
we were supposed to do it tonight.
Supposed to do it.
Yeah, and our show got basically
really
shut down like 5
up.
times, so we gave up.
Really pissed off. So grab one. This is for next week, folks, so we can figure out, since I know we got a lot of our listeners in here right now because they didn't get their full...
Oh, all right.
Oh, shit. We got 2,000 pop.
All right.
So everything from 2,000 pop for next week for all of our episodes. We're normally on, like we said, from 6 to 8, right before Josh's show. So if you want to check us out, Red Pills, you can check us out there. Twitch, D Live, CloutHub, Rumble, wherever else. We also do an audio podcast on...
everywhere but Spotify.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Everywhere but Spotify. So get out there, check us out if you can. We appreciate it. And as... like usual, check out Josh, the Repill Project. He comes on right after us with the Daily Dose, and he does conversations on the Fringe on Friday.
Yes. And he's kind enough to let us broadcast on his channels, because they're his channel, and we have our own channels. But this is
also too. If you've never checked out Liana, she's on in the morning at about 9:05 in the morning. Liana Wilbert, she does her show, another great show that's on the Foxhole. I enjoy listening to that one. So if you guys enjoy us, you'll enjoy her as well. She's a lot of fun. Other than that, either way, So yes, Sunday afternoon, we'll be back at 2:00 with Truspiracy. This week, we've got the Kovac special.
Yep.
So if you want to turn in, hear everything COVID related, this is the one we do. Normally, these are epic. They go 3-4 hours. I think most of the time we go about 4 hours long.
Yep.
Because we get really deep in the weeds on a lot of this COVID shit. So if you want to check it out, Sunday afternoon at 2:00 is when we start. And anything else?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
It's bedtime.
So we appreciate you all coming out tonight, and thank you for coming out, checking out Conversations on the Fringe with us. And we will talk to you later, all.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Yep. Appreciate y'all being here, and have a good night.